I want to thank David Horowitz for that introduction. I want to tell you that Michelle Bachmann and I were both supporting Scott Brown for Senate in Massachusetts. And I see it's not going too well for Nancy Pelosi, for the Speaker. She said yesterday that the House doesn't have enough votes to pass the Senate bill. Well, a few more elections and the House won't have Nancy Pelosi either. But as we watched the State of the Union address last night, it's clear that the president reads a lot of mail. Knowing that, it is really a shame that he's ignored the letters that we've sent him. And I was thinking as we were listening to him embellish about the letters that he got. The letters that my constituents are sending from Orange County, he must be misreading these letters, because the policies in no way, in no conceivable way, matched the rhetoric that I heard last night. And for Michelle and I, who were two of the members who led the fight against the taxpayer-funded bailout, and having watched Barack Obama on the other side of that battle, for us, it was hard to decipher exactly what he was trying to say, except for one theme. And that theme was that as long as we keep sending more money to Washington, and as long as we balloon the spending and create more government jobs, somehow that's going to help the private sector. I don't understand the logic. And I don't for this reason. Having an interest in economics and a background in business, it seems to me that when economists tell us that when you take money out of the private sector to expand government employment at the rate that we're expanding it, and at the same time you send the message to the private sector that if you're considering hiring more employees and you're a small business, well, think about the fact that under the House bill, you might have an 8% increase in your taxes for the health care bill. Think about the fact that if you're in business, you might have a huge spike of 40% in your energy bill if cap and trade goes through. And for those of us in California, we know that for the kind of manufacturing we do today, energy is a bigger component than payroll, for the IT community. And we're looking at this, and we're being told by our businesses, it's the uncertainty about what they're going to do next. And then on top of that, if you're a small business owner and you're thinking about expanding, and you hear that there is a bill to force people to do away, frankly, with the secret ballot, so that you have a card check system where someone walks in, gets a job with your little company, and the next thing you know, he tells you, well, everybody has gotten the word from me that we're going to be a closed shop, and either they sign up or not. You say, okay, let's have an election. Let's have this. No, we've done away. Congress has done away with the secret ballot. That's on the agenda. That is being pushed by Speaker Pelosi. And so if you're a small businessman, what's the mystery about the fact that for the first time in 35 years, we've had such hesitancy, such an apprehension about business expansion or employment hiring? What is the mystery? I have a bill with a colleague of mine, Paul Kanjorski, and I have this legislation that would allow our credit unions out here around the country. We lift the cap so that they could lend more to the small businesses in their community. Now, we can't get that bill passed, Barney Frank. But the legislation that I've seen Barney Frank pass, and the legislation in the past that I've watched, and Michelle Bachmann and I, and how many of you have seen her on committee or maybe on Fox News or CNN, taking on Chairman Barney Frank? All right. The debates that we've had over Acorn, over funding hundreds of millions of dollars. With his last legislation, you could have $1 billion go to these community organizations. When we look at the battles we've had over the years, and one of the struggles I've had is this question about whether or not we really should be ratcheting down the standards. In 1993, President Clinton signed a bill, the GSE Act, the Government Sponsored Enterprise Act, and that bill set up with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, a whole new set of demands that required, where the government, where Congress suddenly are muscling through political pull, are muscling the government-sponsored enterprises, are telling them, you are going to have one half of your portfolio in subprime loans. Of your 1.4 trillion, one half of that has to be in subprime loans. That's a mandate. And on top of that, Congress weighed in, what's this, 20% down? More people will have homes if we get it down to zero. Well, if you get 0% down and people have no skin in the game, and then you've mandated these subprime loans out of the GSEs, what do you think the result is going to be? And then you allow the kind of over-leveraging that we saw in the government-sponsored enterprises, 170 to 1. And I have to tell you this, the Federal Reserve came in and they warned members of Congress. Back in 2005, they said, you face a systemic collapse. You have to regulate the GSEs. You have to reduce these portfolios from 1.4 trillion because there's junk in these portfolios. And when it goes down, other businesses are betting on these because they presume, because they're government-sponsored enterprises, that they have the full, backing of the government behind them. I had a debate with Barney Frank at the time. Many of you have watched it on YouTube because millions have seen it since, myself and other members of the committee, on this very issue. And he said, I want to roll the dice on risk when it comes to the government-sponsored enterprises because it'll mean more affordable housing. I don't want to regulate them like we do the banks and the thrifts for safety and soundness. Well, we didn't, folks. And the consequences were we lost $1 trillion in the housing market. And now some of the same architects of that policy, Chairman Barney Frank, Speaker Pelosi, Chris Dodd in the Senate, those same architects come to us and say, well, the solution is to grow government on top of government. And we look and we say, is this infrastructure spending that we're spending on? No, only 5% of it. Overwhelmingly, when we see these things called a stimulus bill, what are we stimulating? Government employment. That's what's growing at the expense of the private sector, and how you continually expand the governmental sector with borrowing and taxes and take that money out of the private sector and then expect the economy to chug along, I don't know. That's why we're here. Our concern over this. And we've invited Michelle Bachmann here because she helped lead that effort against these taxpayer-funded bailouts. She helped lead that effort to get some kind of sanity and fiscal responsibility back in Washington, and she's doing it from a very, very tough state. I also want to thank her husband, Dr. Marcus Bachmann, for being with us here as well. They've raised 5 wonderful kids. He's made many sacrifices, and so has she, in terms of what they're doing for our nation. But I just wanted to tell you one other story about a little press conference that she invited me to. Now, she does her press conferences a little differently than the president does his. His always has a teleprompter, I noticed. Did you see the elementary school, what was it, last week? And the president came in and he had a teleprompter set up. I guess the theme was something like, it's a mistake to bring cheat sheets to school. I don't know what the theme was. But you think about Michelle's press conferences, which I love because the last one I got invited to in Washington, me and my colleagues, we went out there. She had 20,000 people out there on the steps of the United States Capitol. Ladies and gentlemen, from Minnesota, Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann.